If Apollo Creed had knocked out the titular fighter in the first Rocky movie, the franchise's story would have been incredibly different in a number of key ways. From its first installment, 1976's Rocky, the Rocky franchise has been all about the undeniable dramatic appeal of an underdog story. Taking the true story of Chuck Wepner's fight with Muhammad Ali and peppering in more real-life inspiration, Rocky delivered one of the finest examples of sports drama ever conceived, and it remains the quintessential boxing movie even decades after its release. When heavyweight champion Apollo Creed finds that he's too feared to secure any opponents, he opts to give an unknown local fighter a shot at the title in the hopes of increasing his reputation with his fans. Selecting Philadelphia slugger Rocky Balboa, Creed underestimates the titular fighter, which turns out to be a costly mistake. Despite Creed believing Balboa to be an easy fight, the Italian stallion's heart and determination see him take the champion to the final bell. Despite being the better fighter, Apollo Creed only narrowly secures a points victory over the unknown Rocky, setting up the pair's rematch in Rocky II. Ultimately, it's Rocky's uncanny ability to withstand a superhuman amount of punishment that saw him last to the final bell of Rocky, but realistically, he would have struggled to hold his own against the champion. As the heavyweight champion of the world, Apollo Creed should have been able to knock Rocky out, especially as Balboa neglected to utilize any significant defensive tactics during the fight. If Apollo had knocked Rocky out in their first fight, the future of the Rocky franchise would have changed drastically. Balboa wouldn't have been given another title shot, and likely wouldn't have gone on to reach the heights of the sport in the way he was clearly capable of. Rocky's ending would have been much sadder had Creed won by knockout. The Rocky movie ending would have been sadder by far. Though Rocky lost on points in the film's true ending, the narrow margin of his defeat was enough to secure him a future in the world of boxing. It proved he was a world-class fighter, despite his defeat. Being knocked out by Apollo Creed would have prevented that ray of hope from materializing, ending Rocky's story on a much sadder note for the fighter. If Rocky had been knocked out, he'd have ended the movie facing the knowledge that he'd come up short in the greatest test of his career. The climactic fight ending with Rocky being knocked out would transform Rocky's underdog theme, instead making the film about the crushing weight of personal limitations. Ending the film with a knockout would see Rocky's dreams coming crashing down around him, as well as forcing him to confront the shortcomings of his own boxing ability. Rocky II would have been a different story. It goes without saying that changing the outcome of Rocky and Apollo Creed's first fight would significantly alter the film's direct sequel, Rocky II. Instead of following Rocky as he strives for greatness a second time while Apollo attempts to repair his tattered reputation, the sequel would have been forced to explore Rocky's confrontation of his own limitations. Having Rocky lose by knockout would serve as something of a public humiliation for the proud young fighter, and Rocky II could follow his attempts to come back from the high-profile defeat. As the true sequel's ending sees Rocky win his rematch with Apollo, the Rocky II alternate ending after Rocky's knockout defeat in the first movie would be different, but potentially just as triumphant. The sequel to Rocky's knockout loss could be a more personal journey for the Italian stallion, having Balboa come to terms with his own capabilities and strive to push past them. Having Rocky finally overcome his knockout defeat to Apollo Creed would make a satisfying end for a potential sequel, but it would be a vastly different story and ending from the real Rocky II. Rocky's entire career would have followed a different path in the Rocky franchise. Balboa's career only truly took off after taking Apollo the distance in the first movie. Being knocked out by the champion in Rocky would have significantly impacted Rocky Balboa's boxing career, because he wouldn't have been afforded the same opportunities. If Rocky had suffered a knockout in the first film, it's unlikely he'd ever have been given another chance at fighting for a world title. It's possible that a defeat to Apollo would have brought an end to Rocky's boxing career, but the most likely outcome would be that Balboa would continue to fight regardless. However, despite the fact that the wider recognition might earn him more money, it's likely that Rocky Balboa would have faded into obscurity after returning to the small-time fights of his pre-Creed career. This is backed up by the real fighter that Rocky Balboa is based on, Chuck Wepner, who was knocked out by Muhammad Ali after an unexpectedly close-fought contest. Wepner never again graced the world stage in the same way, and it's likely that Rocky wouldn't have, either. How Rocky's knockout defeat would have transformed the franchise. Rocky being knocked out by Apollo Creed wouldn't necessarily have ended the Rocky franchise, but it certainly would have changed it. Instead of focusing on Rocky's reign as a heavyweight champion, it instead could have focused on the struggles of a journeyman fighter as he ages out of the sport, and potentially transitions into coaching and running his own gym. This wouldn't be too far removed from the narrative ideas explored in the Rocky franchise's Creed spin-offs, although it would likely have changed the tone and style of the franchise, too. The Rocky movies are defined by their slightly outlandish stories that warrant the suspension of disbelief, but a knockout defeat for Rocky in the first film would have forced the franchise to be more grounded. The first film ending with a brutally realistic knockout victory for the champion would have kept Rocky Balboa at a level that his boxing ability indicates he's most comfortable at, from a technical point of view. A knockout in Rocky would have been a more realistic ending, and it likely would have spawned a more realistic franchise, but still one that could have afforded plenty of opportunity for sports drama. Should Apollo Creed have knocked out Rocky? As Rocky's Apollo Creed was a supremely talented champion with a significant technical advantage over Balboa, the most believable outcome of their fight would be a knockout victory for the champion. This is backed up by Rocky's own boxing style, which makes no obvious use of any real defense. The Italian stallion simply absorbs punches from the world's greatest fighter without being rendered unconscious. Even if Rocky wasn't knocked out by the blows, his trainer or the referee would likely have stepped in to put an end to the beatdown, particularly as Balboa seemed unable to protect himself at times. As a result, the fight between Rocky and Apollo Creed should realistically ended with Rocky being knocked out or the fight called to a stop. Though it may be the most reasonable climax, that doesn't mean it's for the best. Rocky being knocked out might have provided a more grounded future for the Rocky franchise, but that doesn't necessarily equate to better movies. Rocky's unbelievable ability to withstand punishment and continue to fight is a crucial element of the beloved franchise, meaning that the Rocky ending was ultimately perfect. Key release dates: Creed 3 release date, the 3rd of March, 2023.
My heart returns to you, dinner, you were